So I've noticed a bunch of people, including some prominent YouTubers, who seem to be confused by the free will versus determinism debate, argument, dichotomy. I don't really believe there is such a thing, but they seem to think so. So I figured I'd make this video as part of the philosophy series to try and clarify exactly what is determinism and why it's not this scary boogeyman and it's not something that's incompatible with free will. First of all, let's just state at the outset, determinism is, and therefore you can't argue against determinism. It is. It's like arguing against yourself. Anyway, so let's state at the outset what most people define free will as: the ability to make a choice. That's really all it means. And determinism, most people think of it as predetermination, that everything that is going to happen must happen. Because cause and effect. Therefore, from the first cause, you could logically get to this effect. One of the problems with determinism is, at least hard determinism I'd say, is the current theory of quantum physics, where there can be probability patterns that kind of questions some of the hard determinism. However, or calls into question some of that. Sam Harris chalks this up to a little bit of randomness. I think it's merely that we just don't know enough. Anyway, determinism basically says for every effect there's a cause. I think this is obvious. I mean, I realized this as a kid. I was, whatever, like 5 or 6 watching HBO, no, it wouldn't have been HBO, some TV station, and they used to have ads on for the telephone psychics, dial 1-900 and Miss Cleo will tell you your future. And I thought, I'm doing a horrible impression of whatever the stupid-ass voice they used was. But it seemed obvious to me at the time that if you had perfect knowledge, if you were omniscient, if you were God, essentially, then of course you would know the future. You could predict any, if you knew each person, how everything functioned, you could predict the future perfectly. I suppose I still hold to that view. The thing that the people that are arguing against determinism don't understand, and the people that are arguing for determinism seem to miscomprehend, is that there is no omniscient being, and there never will be. They think, well, we'll get this computer, and this computer will be, by definition, the computer never can be smarter than itself, in which case the computer cannot account for itself and everything else. It's the infinity problem. You cannot have this infinity plus. And the problem is, no matter how smart you get, you'll never be smart enough to account for your intelligence and all the other intelligences, everything else. It just doesn't work, practically speaking. And therefore, it's a meaningless debate. Yes, everything's determined, but that's like, yes, there could be a God. It's meaningless if there is, because there's no way we could ever know. There could be the creator, the deistic God. Same with determinism. The truth is, what's so? It's also, so what? And I feel that way about determinism. Determinism is what's so, it's also so what? And this Est had a lot of determinism in it. So, going back to the main point, of course you have the ability to make a choice. And this seems to be the main psychological, philosophical disconnect between people arguing this, is that determinism doesn't preclude choice. What it does is it says you will always make the choice that you would always make. In other words, try making a choice you wouldn't make. Go ahead, just do it. Make a choice you won't make. By definition, you can't. The only choice you can make is the choice you make. Because you made it. It's not difficult to comprehend. Obviously, every choice you make is the choice you'd make. It's the same for anything. It seems so obvious that I don't know how anyone can not grasp this. Now, where S takes this, which is interesting, and I've actually had this conversation with my daughter recently because she was having a depressive crisis, a crisis of, I'd say a crisis of perception. She was feeling depressed, feeling like her life wasn't what she wanted it to be, and I remembered an Est quote. I probably won't remember it perfectly, but perfection is what is. In other words, I can be no different than I am. Therefore, I am perfectly me at this moment. I can't be anything different. I have to be exactly as I am. This camera I'm recording with is perfect for itself. In other words, it cannot be any different than it is. The only time that something can be imperfect is when we wish for things to be as they aren't, which is absurd in and of itself. Now you can look forward to things getting better, you can hope, but don't wish reality isn't reality. That's absurd. It's not productive, and it will never be reality, because reality is what it is. It's just a recipe to be miserable and unhappy. And I went through a long philosophical conversation with her, and she's no longer depressed anyway, so it's a good thing. I think she grasped a good portion of what I was trying to get across to her. And that's the main importance of determinism. It isn't that you can't make a choice, because you can. You always do. Matter of fact, you have no choice in the matter. And you have no choice about which choice you will make, because you're you. You can't be anyone else. Obviously, it doesn't have anything to do with us individual decision making, because none of us are omniscient. And therefore, it's meaningless to say that everything we do is determined, because there's no one out there. There's no God up there looking down and saying, see, it was obvious he was going to make that choice. No, none of us are that smart. By definition, none of us are smart enough to encompass ourselves plus. I hope that's obvious. And this is where the any of the determinists get confused. And I've heard this from Sam Harris, I've heard this from Destiny. It's this idea that because we cannot be anything other than what we are, that society should take account of that. And, it's sort of like a backdoor to progressivism, to the idea that, we can't, if these people are poor, it's not their fault, and therefore we should help them. But me not wanting to help them is also predetermined. There's in a deterministic universe, which I don't think you can get away from, there is no morality that's universal. It's all determined ahead of time. There can be no morality as such. Now we can put a morality on it if it's has a specific function. And we have no choice about doing that. So I am an anarchist, libertarian, anarchist philosophically, libertarian practically. I don't believe that anarchism put into practice would functionally work. I'm not a believer in utopias. I don't believe we can have a utopia, at least not currently, unless you somehow implement eugenics or some other program to only get people that will function in your utopia. And maybe that's the choice. I don't know. Now see, some people like Destiny and probably Sam Harris certainly would definitely, no, we could never do that, because that would be immoral, or that would be wrong. I don't know. I don't know if there is a right and wrong in that sense. A societal right and wrong, a political right and wrong. There isn't. There's only, practically speaking, what will be the best for me, most importantly, but also the best for everyone else. I'm less concerned with them, because they have to be as they are, and I have to be as I am. Oh yeah, so I was discussing the progressive determinism. Has this sort of feel like, well, because people couldn't do any differently, we have to. Well, no, we don't. Basically, these are competing systems that were required to be competing. It was all determined long ago in a galaxy far, far away. There is no ought. There's only is. Sam Harris tries to get to an ought, and there isn't an ought there. I mean, he can't do anything else, but that doesn't mean anyone should listen to him and care what he thinks. Indeed, the people that will, and the people that won't. That's part of the determinism. So, you can't use determinism to justify progressive politics. That's basically my take on the situation. I mean, you can, obviously. Some of you can. But I don't believe it follows logically from it, which is what Sam Harris and others seem to imply. And I think the real problem, and why they think they can do that, is they think they're much smarter than they are. See, I know that I'm not that smart. I'm only as smart as I am. I'm not as smart as every person on the earth. And unless you're that smart, you're not that smart. You can't mold society into your utopia. You can't fix it. At least deterministically speaking, you have no... Determinism doesn't help you at all there. Unless you can predict your own life heading into the future perfectly, you certainly can't predict a billion lives heading into the future. Practically speaking. We can't even predict the weather. We're not gonna... It's like ants playing around in a nuclear reactor. No, we're not that smart. And no one is unless you believe in God, in which case then you can believe whatever the hell you... Because if you can believe that, you can believe anything. So yeah, don't get sucked into the BS Sam Harris destiny. Well, because these people couldn't be any other way, we have to... No, we don't. That's an ought, and you haven't justified that yet. So basically, I would argue, at least determinism, that from determinism, if you were to construct a moral code, so to speak, or a value system from that, you would have to first accept that everyone is exactly as they are. That you are not smart enough to change them. Those would be, point 1, point 2. Everyone's exactly as they are, you're not smart enough to fix them, and that there is no universal morality by which you could choose how best to change them. So the question then becomes, what should practically be done? And I would say that what we can do is what would be best for us individually. And what is best for each person individually, not thinking about the collective, is for them to be as free as possible. Now, how that works out for each person, that's another, and hence where I get to, anarchism obviously is the ideal, but that's where I get to libertarianism as a practical implementation of that. You can't get to we should help everyone, because then you've got an ought. People should be X, and then you think you're God, and you're not that smart. You're not omniscient. You can't do that. I mean, you can, obviously, but logically speaking, you can't do that. It doesn't make sense. So, yeah, that's basically my take. And so, in a deterministic universe, the idea of free will as being able to choose something you wouldn't choose is completely illogical. Try it. Just think about that in your head. Can you choose something you wouldn't choose? Can this light be not a light? Can it? It's reality has to be what it is. You can't. I don't know how anyone could think that free will means something it doesn't. Free will means the ability to make a choice, and you always do. You have to. I'm repeating myself, but really, it's this misdefinition of free will as being able to make a choice that you wouldn't make that I think is harmful. How can anyone make a choice they wouldn't make? That doesn't mean that choice can't be influenced by other... Indeed, that's the essence of determinism. It's influenced by everything. Well, not probably. Everything's influenced by everything. So yeah. So it's not that you can't change your mind, or your mind can't be changed, and you couldn't do something different. It's just that you have to do something different if your mind is changed. If I convince you that determinism is valid, is the only is, so to speak, that determinism is, then you have no choice in the future. You have to recognize that determinism is. You can't choose not to. If you recognize that something is a chair, you cannot suddenly decide it's not a chair. You could call it something else, but in your mind you know it's still a chair. It is. You have a definition of chair. It fits within that definition, therefore it's a chair. That's how our minds work. That's how they have to work. There's no choice in the matter. It is. And so this whole idea, I don't believe that the people advocating or arguing that there's free will really believe that people can make choices they can't make, or they wouldn't make. Because by definition, people only make the choices they make, which is determinism. That's it. That's the essence of determinism. Things are exactly as they are. They can't be anything else. And if you can recognize that, you can be a lot happier. Because you won't be wishing for reality not to be what it is. I don't think I have anything else to say on that subject. Except stop confusing the issue. It's really simple. If you tell people that are proponents of free will, if you explain to them that free will just means that the choice you make, you have to make that choice. You can't make a choice you wouldn't make. Determinism means reality exists and we can't wish it away. That's all determinism means. And reality is cause and effect. If you don't believe in that, then you're discounting reality. Something else is more important to you than reality. And that's a dangerous and harmful way to live. If you hear somebody confusing the issue, please correct them, because it drives me nuts. And I want people to be happy. I don't know why. I don't have a choice in that. I want people to be logical and reasonable and consistent, sensible. Not many people are. They don't have a choice in that. I don't have a choice in that pissing me off. That's just the way it is.